Jonathan, it's a delight to be with you today. And I really want to find out more about the work of CAMPAIN. But before we do that, would you like to tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Well, thanks for interviewing. It's a great pleasure, always, Stephen. Just a little bit. I studied a broad economics degree with a strong focus on international relations, and that was right in the middle of the Vietnam War at the end of the 60s. So you might say I'm a child of the 60s wanting to change the world. I worked in overseas development on agricultural marketing matters and food distribution. I involved a lot of travel to mainly developing countries. I observed a lot what makes countries move forward, what makes them stagnate, starting with my wife's country in Central America. A key point in this work was when I visited Kenya in 2018, a week after Al-Qaeda had blew up the American embassy and taking 250 Kenyans, 4 Kenyans with them. And that got me reading about the Middle East and what had gone on there, how it had got there, and the British responsibility for it. And of course, that led me to the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian issue, a sore which wouldn't go away. And from that point on, I tried to, whereas I'd been traveling overseas a lot, looking at other countries, I tried to better understand my own country and its role in the world.
That's helpful. Tell me now, what is CAMPAIN?
CAMPAIN is a membership organization. It's 2 years old. It's concerned about misrepresentation, pushing back against misrepresentation in the public domain and gross misinformation. We don't try to pick a fight on every issue, but we do try to focus on the worst cases and the causes behind it, particularly dirty money and the swirling around, producing propaganda in the through think tanks and things like that. We are a non-partisan organization. We see it as a virtue being we have members of all parties and religions and none. And we believe in working closely with other organizations and individual campaigners, trying to do similar things, not trying to reinvent the wheel. So far, we've mainly been producing blogs and these open letters you've been seeing, starting with one to the Labour Party, moving on to the BBC, and now the Church of England.
So tell me a bit more about what motivated you to set up the organisation. What's wrong with the media?
Well, there were 6 founders. We were. The best known is probably Tim Llewellyn, former BBC Middle East correspondent. And we're aware of challenges facing our own society and the fragmentation of the effort of those trying to address those challenges, and therefore the need to try to pull these people together, unify efforts. So often when I'm talking to people who about misinformation about, say, Jeremy Corbyn regarding anti-Semitism, I hear it from people on the left say, "Oh, this is an attack on socialism." Well, damn it, it's not just an attack on socialism, it's an attack on all of us, whether we carry around the word socialist on our sleeves or don't. Okay, so we need to think of these in terms of a national challenge. Now, in saying the challenges facing our own society, these include being dragged into a series of ill-advised Middle Eastern wars, causing untold and lasting damage. Remembering that in the weeks before the invasion of Iraq, Tony Blair talked to, I understand he talked to Rupert Murdoch as much or more than he talked to his own his own ministers. Murdoch was trying to sort of bring together the Anglosphere in this great project he believed in, which was invading Iraq. Then there was the awesome campaign to discredit anyone who spoke up for Palestinian rights as anti-Semitic, and censoring information that didn't, the vast amount of information which didn't fit that thesis, hard evidence that was being ignored all the way through, and that's happened all the time. And what I could see was a rerun of the McCarthy era in the United States, except you have to substitute the word anti-Semite for communist. It's just about as simple as that. Then there was the phone hacking scandal, which was revealed by some remarkable investigative journalism from 2006 onwards, and that people working actually for The Guardian. But it's not just the hacking of over 7,000 British people, but the fact that what that implied about its use, which was basically compromat. We have this information on you, so you better behave, or the fear of being targeted, and therefore the need for those people to not to raise their heads too much against whatever the Murdoch dynasty or other press barons wanted. There was massive fear. What I've really noticed talking to public figures over the last few years is massive fear of speaking out and being attacked in the media, and inducing them to take the path of least resistance and going along with the flow. And this doesn't just involve, well, let me come back. As regards the fragmentation in the response, I noted tribalism, people not standing up for one another. And this is exacerbated, of course, in a system of oppositional politics. You always, you have to keep to the party line, but party line can be really the enemy of the truth. There's a growth in identity politics during this period, focusing on the rights of minority, which has its place, or the majority, particularly in the case of Brexit. You might say the Scottish nationalism, another form of identity politics, which is driving people apart. My daughter lives within spitting distance of the border with Scotland, and I'm not too happy about the idea of a border along between Northumberland and North Berwick. And then we have the social media creating echo chambers. Now, this fragmentation is also evident among those trying to reform the system. And this is, people who are standing up to things that are wrong often do not acknowledge each other, but they work in parallel lines that never meet. And particularly with some of these people who've raised the issue of Israel-Palestine, they say, oh, we don't want to go there. They'll talk about anything progressive except on Palestine. So what we saw we needed in our group was to get as many people as possible campaigning together against misrepresentation, misinformation, without exception, regardless of who's being targeted.
That's helpful. You mentioned earlier about an open letter to the Church of England. Why has CAMPAIN written this letter to the Archbishops? Well,
the Church of England is a national institution. It is the established church at the heart of Britain's life. And what it does is of interest not just to Anglicans, it's interest to anyone, because it's so closely related to the state. At the same time, it has big ambitions for social justice. The fourth mark of mission of the Church of England is to transform unjust structures of societies, to challenge violence of every kind and pursue peace and reconciliation. And in the life of the church, not just the Church of England, but all the churches, there are heroic precedents going back over the last 2 millennia, particularly things like the work to abolish slavery, prison reform, and things like that. But it seemed to me that the Church of England and my colleagues, let's say, had not been pulling its weight in speaking up for justice in important cases over recent years. It was particularly the case as regards Palestine and British responsibility for it. And then we noticed Archbishop Welby backing Chief Rabbis Mervi's warning about Jeremy Corbyn on grounds of anti-Semitism. Now, in so doing, he maybe inadvertently interfered in our electoral process in the run-up to the 2019 election. The two basically told Christians and Jews not to vote for Labour. Let the Conservatives win. Now that is very unfortunate. Then we didn't see the church really standing up vigorously against all that lay behind the phone hacking scandal. The church divested itself of £1.9 million of shares in News Corp in 2012, but since then we've hardly had a dicky bird out of them. People have been fighting very hard for the Leveson II reforms, really necessary for reforms to make the mainstream media accountable to the British people. We don't really hear the church. There may be one or two bishops who've said something in the House of Lords, but the church as an institution has not spoken up on this awful situation. So we just feel that behavior has been a bit shabby, that the church has been taking the path of least resistance, and particularly, very concerned about interfaith relations, but not in terms of really discussing the issues between the faiths, but more as a diplomatic exercise. Let's not raise the temperature with the local rabbis or whatever, people of other faith. A slightly short-term approach rather than dealing with real issues.
You mentioned in the letter, which I read, a critique of the church's adoption of the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I would describe this as a very successful instrument of Israeli propaganda. The definition, I've written a paper on it with a philosopher from Newcastle, and what we find is, it's logically flawed and it's intellectually dishonest. But it has been mobilized around the world to conflate legitimate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. And I have to say with some success as well, because so many institutions have adopted it in inverted commas and wheeled it out to censor or even to discipline people for on the grounds of supposed anti-Semitism.
So what do you want the Church of England to do?
Well, the Church of England to do its homework. This means, it sounds a bit patronizing, but really it needs to study the history. And there's a lot of good stuff written there by people like Ilan Pappy, who's Israeli professor of history at the University of Exeter, Avi Schleim, and of course the Balfour Project, which has done wonderful forensic work analysing the history of what has happened since the First World War, as regard and about Britain's responsibility for what's been going on. It needs to listen to voices regarding Jewish voices other than the Board of Deputies, which didn't start this way many years ago. It has become intimately, it's putting forward the Israeli official line, basically. So it knows to talk to the many non-Zionist or anti-Zionist Jews, among secular Jews, and also among Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox religious Jews. We often meet on the street campaigning against the behavior of Israel and its cruel occupation and ethnic cleansing, slow motion ethnic cleansing in Palestine. And I think the Church of England needs to talk more to Palestinians who are on the receiving end, and enter into frank interfaith dialogue on the real issues which exist, focusing on facts, particularly on and particularly really to try to get to grips with the statistics which exist in the public domain on anti-Semitism across the society, because they will tell very clearly that anti-Semitism it's not a major phenomenon in this country compared to prejudice towards other minorities, but along with most of these prejudices, they're higher on the right of the political spectrum in the Conservative Party than they are on the left. So the church should not go along with a fabricated narrative about this, which just doesn't fit the facts. Church needs to show more courage, stand up to bullies, and there is a lot of bullying, I'm afraid, going on in this domain. People who talk about Israel and Palestine, critical of Israel, they are attacked by trolls. They have their social media trawled for anything can be construed, or more usually misconstrued, as anti-Semitic. But the church, I think, really needs to get to grips with this. And we in Campaign stand ready to help.
How can people read the open letter or sign it if they wish to?
Go to our website, which is www.campaign.org, and campaign is spelt without a G, CAMPAIN, with the letters of our first letters of our full name. Go to the About Us tab in the campaign website, and open and then scroll down to open letter. The last tab, I think it's open letter to the Archbishops. When they open that letter, they'll find there's a form at the top, and it has some brief questions, and try to tell us a bit about yourself. If you come from a faith background, we're interested in knowing that, whatever the thing. And there's already a variety of things being posted there by different people.
And if folk want to join Campaign, how do they do that?
Again, go to the same website and go to the last tab, which says More, and scroll down to Join Us.
Jonathan, that's so good. Thank you very much for your perspective on the work of Campaign. We're very grateful, and we look forward to a further conversation sometime soon. Thank you.
Let me just add that we have an active membership who contribute in different ways, drafting letters, providing info, IT assistance and things like that. And that's our strength. Okay, look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.